Hey everyone, what's up? I'm seeing the whole Billy Joe Sanders comparisons scenarios. I'm also seeing the Jamel Charlo scenarios, and Billy Joe Sanders, he kind of leans to his left, just like Crawford does a lot of the times, and Canelo was eventually able to land a punch that did break his face. But this is also a cokehead, and this is a guy who's not really dedicated to the sport of boxing. But he does have a high boxing IQ, you know what I'm saying? He does have some innuendos to his game, whatever else you guys want to say. As far as Charlo, again, it's another scenario that we see happen to Crawford sometimes. Crawford, when he's in the high guard, he thinks his arms are in the path of a punch, and this has caused some opponents to be able to land through his guard. You know what I'm saying? He's definitely going to have to look out for these type of scenarios. But you guys are not talking about the scenario of Canelo that's occurred over the span of his career. You understand? People were claiming I'm not talking about Crawford's weaknesses. The truth of the matter is, Crawford has less weaknesses than your dude Canelo. That's just the truth. That is the reality, guys. You understand? Now, can size bridge that gap and make it where it's not going to be an issue? I don't know, guys. Because again, I haven't seen your fighter. He's Jake Paul, guys. Jake Paul just had a fight this weekend. There's plenty of people that think that the dude laid down, which he more than likely did. Jake Paul uses Canelo's game plan when it comes to the art of making fights and what type of things to include into a fight, So, again, whenever I see your dude step up to the elite level, he always falls short. When you step up to a guy who has true elite skills and truly is proven, again, he doesn't really cause separation in these fights. And I've been telling you guys, this dude doesn't really have a game plan. He doesn't have a jab. He doesn't have a clinch game. He's bigger, but are you going to use your size to your advantage in this fight? You did not do so versus Floyd Mayweather. You respected Floyd Mayweather, although you had a significantly weight edge on him. You were trying to box a guy when you should have just sat there and tried to beat him up. And you didn't do that because you're getting countered. And this is what I'm talking about. I believe this fight is going to play out much like the Madrimov fight. Again, you guys swear up and down Madrimov did all this damage to Bud. I did not see it in the facial damage. And quite frankly, I didn't really see it much at all. They did delete my videos on, they blocked them when I covered some rounds on Madrimov. Some of you did get to see those. All three judges gave round 7 to Madrimov, which is totally erroneous. You understand? We went over that, but the other ones, they just outright would not even let me upload. That's kind of the barrier that's working against me when it comes to the film studies. Back then, they allowed me to just do it, and it wouldn't be a problem, although a lot of them would get, striked and things like that. But they're really good with the footage. I don't know how to, I do know the process of securing the rights, but it is it's a long process, guys. It's stupid what you got to do now. And I don't understand how some channels are allowed to, and my channel is not, but regardless of all that, Canelo, he doesn't have a real game plan. He's a guy who, at the end of the day, is just trying to land a hard shot. Against Bivol, at the end of the day, you're just trying to land a hard shot. Against Floyd, at the end of the day, you're just trying to land a hard shot. And again, you'll see him do some cool little things. When he throws that left hook, you see that he brings out his right hand. That way, while he's throwing his left hook, he drops it because it's usually from the hard guard. He has to drop it, then loop it, you understand? And then he still waits and see what the opponent, how he's going to react to it. And the opponent sometimes drops his guard like you saw in the Berlanga fight, and Canelo was able to bring it back up top. You know what I'm saying? His setup, again, I call it level 1 when it comes to elite level. You have a level 1 setup to your game. But when you get to the Bivols, when you get to the Floyd Mayweathers, even Laura's, you understand, even a Skull, you couldn't really have much success on a guy like Skull. It's not that hard to avoid these type of shots. You know what I'm saying? GGG, he's not mobile, so he really had no choice but to be in range for Canelo a lot of the time. And he was very apprehensive in that fight. The killer that you guys all claim GGG was, he was apprehensive in all the Canelo fights. And again, a lot of that was due to Canelo's mobility, but again, Canelo had faster hand speed. Canelo's not the best counter puncher, but he can't counter you. You know what I'm saying? But a guy like Floyd, again, this is a guy, okay, here's a left hook, it hit me this time, great. You know what, here's the left hook again, it hit me this time. You know, let's give him credit. He's going to hit, you know, this is the third time I got hit with this. At some point, Crawford's going to adapt to the punch. You understand? He's going to see what Canelo does. Crawford is going to pick up pattern recognition on Canelo before Canelo picks up pattern recognition on Terrence Bud Crawford. You know what I'm saying? Crawford is going to have to watch out for the scenarios I just talked about, the Billy Joe Saunders sequence. You know, the Jermell Charlo when he's up against the ropes and Canelo's able to adjust his overhand right, you know, to land through the guard. That's a punch that can possibly land, you know. But again, Crawford in these sequences is going to be countering you. Crawford is a highly intelligent guy, and his legs are not as shot as you guys claim he is. He does quite well defensively, although you guys try to blow up only 80 punches being landed on him is a, you know, a robbery. But then you sit here and you praise Ortiz's performance, where he had about 130 punches landed on him, and his face was far more busted up than Terrence Crawford. And again, when you watch that fight again, you're going to see how Ortiz, he let off a gear in the championship rounds. In the Bud fight, you're going to see that Bud definitely stepped it up in the championship rounds. And he was the guy taking the more risks, walking down the bigger man. You see this scenario play out all the time in Bud fights for whatever reason. All these guys who put their faith and trust in size, they don't fight like big men. They become the counter puncher. They become the guy who tries to set up a trap and have Crawford walk to them and things like that. We've gone over this so many times, guys. You understand? But Canelo does not have a true game plan. His game plan at the end of the day is to land a hard shot. Hopefully one that his opponent doesn't see coming. And you're only going to get so far when that is your only game plan. This is a Gervonta Tank Davis game plan. This is a Deontay Wilder game plan. And it's crazy because, you know, during the Bivol fight, once that game plan didn't work, Canelo he was in such a frustrated state. He was also fatigued after the 4th or 5th round. You know what I'm saying? It got to the point where he couldn't even control himself to where he can adjust his shots and things like that. He literally kept throwing the same sequence against Bivol all night, hoping that it will finally land and hurt Bivol. And that just never occurred in the fight. But he would land at the side of Bivol's shoulder. He could not adjust it. He could not land clean shots that were effective enough to really affect Bivol. Even though the commentaries were acting like this dude was, you know, landing them. You know? But he couldn't adapt to what Bivol did. Bivol's defensively responsible. Crawford and Bivol are about the same level when it comes to defensively responsible, although Bivol is a lot more cautious, you know. But regardless of that, you know, I'm just trying to tell you guys, once big shot doesn't land, what is Canelo going to do next? He doesn't have a jab. He doesn't use his size. He doesn't clinch opponents. Like Vladimir used to lean on smaller guys to try to tire him out as well. Canelo doesn't do these type of things. He wants to showcase his boxing skills. He wants to show that he's the superior fighter, which he's going to try to do. This fight is going to take place mostly in the middle of the ring. And like I said, Billy Joe Saunders, all these guys were getting rounds on this dude. You know what I'm saying? And then I believe it's going to get a point, especially when Canelo gets tired, when he's winging those haymakers. You know what I'm saying? The only way he has to win is a KO in this fight. I don't think he can win through merit by trying to outbox and accumulate rounds against Bud. You guys claim that Bud is a slow starter, but I know Bud's going to win the early rounds against Canelo. I know Canelo's going to be very nervous, and again, there's going to be a lot of respect in this fight. He's going to be in a scenario, you know, just like the Bivol fight, although they gave him the first 4 rounds. You know what I'm saying? But you're going to be in a scenario where you're going to be down in the fight. And again, you're going to try to do something drastic like you did in the Kovalev fight. You're going to try to do something drastic, like you did in whatever other fight. Even like a Billy Joe Saunders. And when those opportunities keep drying up, what are you going to rely on? We saw in the lower fights that, he eventually said, screw it, I'm just going to walk forward and throw punches. And he got credit for that. A lot of people, they don't necessarily think that Canelo won that fight. You know what I'm saying? And also lower moving backwards and things, perception-wise, that affects people. They think just because a guy's walking forward, that's scoring criteria. It's called effective aggression. And the boxing criteria is symbiotic. One affects the other. You know what I'm saying? If you're coming forward and just throwing punches and you're not landing, you understand, it used to count towards a guy's defense. And you don't get credit for ring generalship as well. But that's already too much for people. They see a guy move forward, they assume he's already winning the round, Oh, he's throwing punches, but he's not landing. He's getting countered, although he's throwing 4 punches and then he gets countered. We're still going to give the guy credit who's just moving forward and throwing punches. Although you guys didn't do that in the Ortiz versus Madrimov fight. You'll see in like rounds 10, 11, 12, Madrimov was the guy actually putting in more effort. But you guys, it's always this constant flux where nobody keeps it consistent, and standards are always different for everybody for some reason. Again, Munguia lands 170 punches on Canelo. You guys don't see that as a problem. You understand, but you see a guy who was timid, was scared to throw punches, was scared to use his size against Bud Crawford, who managed to land 80. Bud's overrated and he just got exposed. Again, guys, I'm trying to work with your logic here. A lot of your logic is like a female, which means there's no logic here. You understand? But again, if Bud can get to Canelo to that point, just like a Bivol, just like a Floyd, just like a Lohr and everybody else, where he's had some huge trouble and he can't necessarily get the KO, you know what I'm saying? Well, you get this Canelo, again, like in Bivol, he can only throw the same sequence, jab, jab, and then haymaker, right hook, to the side of the shoulder all night. Bivol just had the rinse, wash, repeat on him all night. That was an easy fight for Bivol, guys. I'm sorry. Not in the sense that, it's not like Canelo's not a difficult opponent. And it's not like he's not a solid fighter. But you guys have kind of overblown this guy. And I think you people need to start admitting this. Now, he does have the size advantage. But just like a Floyd, you don't use your size like a conventional fighter. Like a Margarito will use his size. Julio Cesar Chavez would use the size advantage and just, cover dudes and be all on them. Won't even let him breathe and everything else. And Canelo just does not do that. He wants to look fancy. He wants to look, I got skills, guys. Look, I can move my head. I got footwork and all this. He's just a guy that does not utilize his size. And this fight, you're up against a counterpuncher. You're up against a guy who can seize openings. If you're in the high guard and your body's open, Crawford's more than capable of landing body shots. And he's more than capable of setting them up. If you watch guys like Madrimov, if you watch guys like Martirosyan that utilize that high guard. And another thing too is, again, we talked about Canelo's left hook. You have to drop it, then loop it. Do you not? You don't have the ability like a Terrence Crawford to land and throw your shots from wherever your hands are placed. Crawford has that ability. Guys like Benavidez, for example, have that ability. And this is why, of course, we know your dude's, avoiding Benavidez at all costs. Crawford's really only getting this fight because we're scared of Benavidez, and we all need to pay homage to some point to Benavidez. He's the real reason why this fight's getting made. But it's the fight I wanted to see anyways. I didn't even want to see this fight originally. But, Crawford, again, he'll do some crazy things. He can time dudes. If Canelo wants to drop his hand, because he's trying to set up his left hook and things like that from out of the high guard, Crawford's, just like during the Martirosyan fight, if you guys watch it, he started timing Martirosyan, who had to drop his hands to start landing punches. Now, he did have some crazy, awkward punching against Crawford, where, from the high guard, he'll throw a crazy punch that Crawford couldn't see. But Canelo typically doesn't do that. You know what I'm saying? Canelo, you can typically see what he's going to throw at you. And again, his most dynamic punch is the left hook. You know, again, you'll see his right arm come out. It helps with his balance and to get power on the shot. And like I said, he can also fine tune it and adjust if he needs to go to the body or the head. That's about as complicated as Canelo gets when it comes to punching. But as long as setting up traps and things like that, he's not really a complicated fighter at all. He's more like a Gervonta Tank Davis. He's got skills. He's got some fast twitch, little bit of hand speed, things like that. You know what I'm saying? But again, guys like Laura, guys like even Skull, guys like Bivol, and of course Floyd Mayweather's, they've been able to pick up on a lot of his stuff. GGG, even for the most part, didn't do too bad versus your dude. He's more stationary. He's a more straight up and down fighter. You know, the only thing that really affects his fight is size. But when it comes to the boxing IQ, all that, Crawford's got him beat in virtually every category. And yes, he does have less weaknesses than your Canelo. He takes less punches than your Canelo. Crawford has never been in a fight where a guy landed 170 punches on him. That just does not happen, guys. I'm sorry. It doesn't. It does not happen. Also, against the Martiresian, we saw Crawford's output go up. So he knows how to control, you know, use probing shots and things like that to keep guys' hands like Martiresian's occupied. And for control, if you want to sit there in your high guard, and again, Canelo, he bursts, he roid rages. You know what I'm saying? Because he's not a very active fighter. He's really not. You know what I'm saying? He likes to, again, I got to land the big shot. That's his goal at the end of the day. But Crawford is going to see the drop in weight distribution and when Canelo's winding up to set up those big shots. You know what I'm saying? And he's a smaller guy. He's faster. He's used to fighting smaller, faster guys than Canelo, who's been fighting these guys that he's been fighting. You know what I'm saying? But his reaction time will be a lot quicker than what Canelo's used to. You know, it's going to be a good fight, but it's going to be a chess game. And there's going to be a lot of respect in this ring. Again, if he can get Canelo to that point of frustration and fatigue, Canelo's only going to rely on trying to land a big shot. And as long as Crawford doesn't get hit with those big shots, if he's defensively responsible, if he can counter Canelo effectively, especially in the windup when Canelo's shooting those shots. Another thing too, and I've already mentioned this, Floyd and guys like Bivol, they're more defensive minded. Crawford is more offensive. Crawford is an interceptor. You understand? And I'm trying to tell you, if Canelo wants to throw these big shots that Crawford sees coming, you know, from our perspective, these things happen in split seconds. But fighters, they can see in those pockets of time. And if you give Crawford a lot of time, oh, he's doing this shot again, I'm going to challenge him this time, just like he did with the anchor punch against Brook. I'm trying to tell you, he has a very good chance of hurting Canelo himself. He's going to have to do a more setup because he is a smaller guy. He's going to have to, again, get to the pattern recognition, see what he's actually dealing with first before he can really start taking those types of chances and feeling confident with taking those types of chances. But Crawford is going to time your dude. And I'm going to try to tell you, it's going to be like one of those samurai fights that you guys watch, where these dudes, they make some big dramatic like charge at each other. You know what I'm saying? And then you see both standing and they're not facing each other. And then, you know, all of a sudden one of them just drops. And you're like, what the heck happened? And Canelo could easily be put in those types of situations. You know what I'm saying? Crawford does have the swifter hands. And again, it's not about power, especially when it comes to timing and landing punches that your opponent does not see. That's truly the name of the game when it comes, you know, as far as being a knockout artist. You know, Crawford, he doesn't rely mostly on power. He typically relies more on landing punches that his opponents are not going to see. And I'm trying to tell you, it's no different in this fight. Bivol, again, he knew, okay, I just need to block in my hard guard and move backwards into this direction a little bit. I'll avoid what Canelo's doing to me. And it worked all night. Crawford, though, again, is going to do what the Floyd Mayweathers and the Bivols did not do, or the Lords. He's going to challenge Canelo at some point to land a big shot that Canelo, even if he does see it, it's not like he'll be able to control his momentum and things like that. He'll run right into it. You know what I'm saying? Crawford, again, he can body head people. Canelo can as well on a certain level, but again, you don't see that in his more elite fights. I know you guys are moist at the content. I know a lot of you are mad because I'm not praising your fighter. I know a lot of you are trying to bait me into a proxy race war. You know, you guys are doing whatever you can. You're scoffing religion in my comment section. You know, we had to address that as well. But I think you guys are going to find out what happens to people that go up against Bud. I'm just saying, man. And especially when your fighter is a guy who relies heavily on assistance, you know, from outside means, who does not have to rely mostly on his skills. You know, the machine ain't going to help him. You fans ain't going to help Canelo in this fight. You know, the steroids ain't going to help either. You know, if I was Canelo personally, I'd try to go for a lean build instead of bulk. You're already the bigger guy. I would focus more on working with your stamina and things, but he's not. He's a weightlifter. You know what I'm saying? He's been training his body where he has to rely on bulking up, and that's why he fights the way that he does. It's why there's not much output. You know, especially when he fights higher caliber opponents. You know, he trains for bursts. You know what I'm saying? And he is going to expire in this fight. It's going to be hard, especially against a guy like Crawford, who's going to keep you in the middle of the ring, keep you guessing all night what he's going to do. Again, this fight's mostly going to be on the middle of the ring. Crawford's patient. He's going to be going low, feints, this type of stuff. He's going to be probing your high guard when you have it close to your head. You know what I'm saying? Canelo, again, you're fighting a guy who's smaller and is able to, you know, in those little small pockets of time, he's going to be able to react and adjust in those times and counter you with some stuff. So it's going to bring a whole different dynamic that you guys aren't used to seeing. You're watching these Canelo fights. I will talk to you guys later. You know, you guys got anything, I will try to get film and we can go over this more in depth. But your guy, he doesn't really adjust and he becomes a broken record in fights. It's just that simple. He really doesn't have answers when a guy's more skilled than him, has more boxing IQ, can move, has lateral movement and things like that. He does have the size advantage. And Crawford, you know, he's not Floyd Mayweather, but he's not, I'm trying to think of a guy, I'm Margarito either, how you guys portray him to be. You know what I'm saying? His defense ain't that bad, guys. I hope you guys learn this, you know. Well, you will learn this. You won't have any reason but to learn this. I will talk to you guys later. Bye.